Jessica Evans. Live, love DC. Is that correct?
Love Live DC.
Love, live DC. Even better. We'll fix that in post. Okay.
No
Um,
problem.
so, and Jessica, you're with Compass.
Yes, I am.
Excellent. And do you live in DC?
I do. I have lived in DC since 2011.
Excellent. Where do you live generally?
So I live in Palisades.
Hmm. Okay. Where's that?
It borders the Potomac River on the western side of DC. The specific neighborhood I am in is actually part of Foxhall,
Okay.
but it's one of those weird neighborhoods where, like, traditionally what people view as Foxhall is not the side of Foxhall Road that I'm on.
Hmm.
More people view it as Palisades. So, like, I say it's Palisades,
Gotcha.
but yeah, it could be either.
So I grew up near, kind of near 16th Street Heights, over near Carter Barron, which I think is that near Foxhall, or am I in the wrong part of the city?
Wrong part of the city. So,
Okay.
like, if you know where Georgetown University
Sure.
is, like, where the campus is, like, immediately west of the campus is the Foxhall neighborhood. There's also, like, Archibald Park is like a park that runs north to south there, and then you have the actual Foxhall neighborhood, which is like Tudor row homes, and then we're just on the other side of that. So, like, I could walk straight to Georgetown campus. It's like a half mile through Foxhill neighborhood and the woods.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's great. That leads to this question. So DC is like, if you were talking to somebody coming in from the outside and you're saying like, all right, here is kind of how you look at DC in terms of neighborhoods or the different areas. Like, what are the different areas or communities in DC to kind of choose from?
Well, I usually start by asking some pretty, like, specific questions of clients, because I think that location is something that's based on a few fundamental things. One is a commute, right? If a commute is a factor, then we want to draw a radius around areas that are going to have a reasonable commute. If that's someone taking metro and they need to walk to metro, well, we'll identify the metro stops. I kind of have like a three-phase process that I go through.
Hmm.
And I create a custom map for my clients, like that has the areas that work for if there's more than one party. So commute is usually on the list. Schools, if we need to be inbounds for any specific schools,
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
I'm going to overlay that geographic information on the same map. And then we're going to go into lifestyle. I say lifestyle as the third, only because that's something that is slightly more subjective, but it's also, different neighborhoods are going to have different walkability or different amenities that those I kind of let people tell me exactly what they're looking for.
Of
So
course.
through that process, we typically identify 1 to 3 areas that we want to include in a search. Sometimes it's one big geographic area, sometimes it's like 3 small ones, or like if a client wants to be within a half mile of metro, certain school ratings, like we may have 5 or 6 really small areas. Um, but I find that that's more my approach,
Hmm.
because if somebody can't get to work in the time they need to, or they don't have the schools that they want to send their kids to, like, none of the other things really matter
Of
about the
course,
neighborhood.
right. And so are there like, if you take commuting, because like you said, that's completely, somebody could be commuting up over to Maryland, or they could be commuting to
Right.
Virginia, like it completely is different. Are there like archetypes? Are there like, okay, if you are, young and you want to spend a lot of time going out, like this is where you should go. If you are,
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're like, say you like work from home, right?
yeah,
Say commute is not a factor, and schools aren't a factor, right?
yeah,
Then you're looking primarily at lifestyle factors for where you want to be. And so then I ask people questions about their lifestyle, like, what kinds of things do you do on a regular basis? Is there something you do every day? You want to go to a certain gym or certain type of gym, and you want to be able to walk there. Okay, well, look at the neighborhoods that have that. Or, you don't have a car, so you want to be within walking distance of, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, like certain stores.
hmm,
Okay, we can work with that. Um, so it's really customized based on somebody's specific wants and needs. Like,
Hmm.
I've had people where they're like, I want to be able to walk to a park that has wooded walking trails, right? Well, in DC we're fortunate to have tons of that.
Right.
um, but that's gonna impact our search. And so for each person, I really try to find out what is actually important to them, what is actually a lifestyle consideration. Do they need to be close to family, friends, like any of those things? Do they have certain neighborhoods they just really like the look and feel of, that they
Right.
already know are a good fit? That's
Hmm.
some people come to me and they already know, okay, like here's where we want to look. That's fine.
So let's just sort of put some specifics on it, just so that we have some names.
Sure.
So there's Georgetown.
Hmm.
I lived in the Van Ness area for a bit, which is that Connecticut corridor
Yeah.
that has really cool stuff like Cleveland Park, and then you go down to Woodley Park, and then you're a little closer to downtown. Like, what are the like? I don't want to say, I guess, what are the like, not marquee per se, but like, what are the keystone neighborhoods that if you were saying, like, okay, if you want to live in this type of neighborhood, this is a good kind of avatar. Or if you want to live in Southeast, or if you want to live in Northeast, or if you want to live or whatever, here are the like two or three neighborhood or communities that are to choose from, that then you would, of course, like you're saying, you would dig in with a customized thing. But if you were just kind of like giving somebody the lay of the land of what the
Yeah, I
different
mean, it just
neighborhoods are.
depends on the person's avatar. Like, are they single? Are they married? Do they have kids? Like, that if you give me the avatar, I can say certain neighborhoods that would fit.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking is that for this purpose, this is more like kind of a exploring the neighborhood. So it's kind of like or exploring DC. So they're like, we don't know who the avatar is yet, right? Like, so we're really talking about like somebody who doesn't know that there are neighborhoods in DC. What are
Okay.
the neighborhoods? You know?
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think if somebody is looking for, different neighborhoods stand out to me for different reasons, right? If somebody is looking for something that's really central, really walkable, has historic architecture, I would say Logan Circle, right?
Hmm.
um that stands out to me as that. If somebody comes to me and they're like, I love the convenience of the city, but I want a single family home, I want more tree lined streets, I want affordability, I would say look at Brookland. If somebody comes to me and they say, community is essential to me, I have young kids, I want to be in a community where there's other parents and families and a lot of connection there, I would say Capitol Hill.
Hmm.
It's super dependent on like what somebody tells me is what they're looking for, because I don't think there's any one size fits all neighborhood. I
Sure.
mean, there's certain neighborhoods that come up more than others. There was actually a funny Reddit post recently where, I mean, this the post comes up from time to time, but somebody asked like, if money was no object and like, commute and none of that mattered, like what neighborhood in DC would you live in? And it was interesting because there were as many answers as there are neighborhoods.
Sure. Sure.
Of course, there are neighborhoods that come up time and time again, um just that have certain looks and feels. Like, I think Mount Pleasant is one of those neighborhoods that's like on a lot of people's lists because it's kind of unique in like the tree lined streets but still really walkable. The feel of the neighborhood, just with the trees and streetscape, are it's a lot more similar to the areas west of the park, but some of those don't have the accessibility. And so, yeah,
Yeah, no, I
I
mean,
think.
I know, I mean, I think it's good. I think I'm just imagining that, like, if I was looking at like neighborhood profiles, and it's like, okay, here are the, whatever, 25 neighborhoods. Each one of them would have like a little vignette, right? Like a little,
Mhm.
this is
Yeah.
really close to blank, and it's got a lot of trees, and it's got parks, and this, and like, if you were saying DuPont Circle, like, you wouldn't say single family houses
Right.
with whatever. You would say, crazy good connection to food and easy accessibility and this and this. And if you're
Yeah.
talking Georgetown, you're talking probably row houses, I'm guessing for the most part, or
Mhm.
townhouses, and then blah blah blah. So I think it's like, yeah. So from my perspective, I'm just trying to get a sense of how sort of DC is organized, and like what are the pockets. In the same way that, I mean, like in Northern Virginia, if you say, well, should you live in Vienna or Arlington or Alexandria? I'm like, well, there's a little bit of Vienna and Alexandria, and there's a little bit of Alexandria and Vienna. You can have townhouse living anywhere,
Yeah.
but but you can't have parks in, Old Town. Well, you can, but you can't have like, uh, big open spaces in Old Town Alexandria. So I guess that's the piece that I was just trying to kind of get that first sense so that I could put that into kind
Yeah,
of our
I mean, there
discovery thing.
are there are definitely, primary neighborhoods and sub neighborhoods. Like
Hmm.
I would say Capitol Hill is a great example. Capitol Hill, if you include the whole Capitol Hill area, that's a huge area. But within that, you have Eastern Market, you have Hill East, you have, you know, kind of south of the H Street corridor, like you have a lot of different sub neighborhoods within
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
and those aren't zip codes. And that's actually one of the challenging things about DC is that they're not zip codes. They're not necessarily on the tax record, so
Right,
you
right.
can't necessarily search by them in any capacity other than a map based search.
So that actually is a great point, because, like, I think about that. We talk about that a lot, where it's like, okay, there are communities, which might be
Hmm.
towns or might be whatever. I mean, you have wards in DC, but like that's not really how it's done, right? So it's like you have the quadrants, but like I guess that would be it. So there's Capitol Hill, which would be like a larger community section, but then broken down
Yeah,
into neighborhoods. Like Eastern Market would be a neighborhood, or
right.
fill in the blank would be a neighborhood. Okay, that's good. And so what are the other, like, what would you say are the other big communities? Is Mount Pleasant a community or a neighborhood?
Mount Pleasant is a neighborhood,
Okay.
and that is actually a tax record neighborhood.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is if you look at a house for sale in Mount Pleasant, the tax record says the neighborhood is Mount Pleasant or the subdivision is Mount Pleasant. There are big sections of DC though where the subdivision is Old City 1 or Old City 2.
Mm,
And that's just the nature of when those parts of the city were built. They don't have true subdivision names. Um, and that can make searching difficult depending on where you're searching. But I think, I think that I guess whether you call it a neighborhood or a community, it's kind of the same thing, right?
mhm,
It's
mhm.
like the geographic area, like what is the popular term for it? What would someone
Yes,
who lives in the
yes,
city call this geographic area?
yes.
And there's some variety in that, there's some difference of opinion of where the lines are, but I think for the most part it's consistent. Now, whether somebody considers that a community or neighborhood, I don't
No,
I
you're
don't
right.
know.
And it really is that kind of breakdown, like a neighborhood, like a community. It encompasses neighborhoods, right? Like that would
Right.
be. And so let me ask you just a lifestyle question, and then we can, finish with that. So what are the things that you get excited about? Like if somebody's coming to DC or somebody is new in DC, you're like, oh, this is what's great. Like October is, we have the, water skiing Santa, or we have the farmers market, the big farmers market from four different communities. Like what are there big things that you get excited about where you're like, oh, I can't wait, it's August, not necessarily just weather, but like more the more sort of community activities, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think not each neighborhood, there are a lot of neighborhoods that have kind of their own events. So, like recently or fairly recently, there was like Petworth Porch Fest, right?
Hmm.
That's like a very community centric neighborhood event where people from all over DC will come, but it's like very iconic to that neighborhood.
Hmm.
Or you have like Adams Morgan Day. So like that's a day where, the business improvement district of Adams Morgan has like worked with community leaders to create this annual tradition. And so I think things like that are very like iconically DC
Yeah.
and also like really you know, speak to the area. if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. No, that's perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for, was that type of like, what are the big things that people get excited about? And I'm sure that, like you said, each one of those communities has their own kind of individualized experience. I was curious as to whether there was like a hub wide, a city wide type thing that people got excited about.
I don't know. I think it's more those like more local
Hmm.
events that
Hmm.
people get excited about because I do think, the bigger DC things like the cherry blossoms, like as someone who's lived here, yeah, sometimes I'll go, but like it's so crowded with
Sure.
tourists and it doesn't really give you a sense of like connection to that area or that community or even like DC as a whole.
Yeah.
Um, and so I find that like the smaller neighborhood events are more, more what the locals would consider.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I mean, fourth, I mean, we just had it, right? The 4th of July. It's a big deal in DC to go down to the Washington Monument and see the fireworks one time in your life. I don't know that you need to do that every year. That one's a big one.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. All right, Jessica, thank you so much.